Hey everybody, this is Mark with I'm with the band, back with another video in the series Blues 101, everything you need to know but probably were afraid to ask. So we have touched on in video number one a number of really basic things, some key information about pentatonic scales and why they work and how that fits, and concepts like tension and release and call and response. We looked at blues terminology and what are things like straight 12s and what does it mean to go fast to the 4? What is a blues head in a blues song? What is a turnaround? Stops, all those sorts of things that are critical that everybody needs to know. In this video, it's all about the groove. We're going to dive into everything you wanted to know about shuffles, how a shuffle works, what causes it not to work, what are the different variations, how do you play against different shuffle grooves. Then we're going to dive into 6/8, 12/8 slow blues, rumbas and Latin grooves, things like a country hop type thing, and rock grooves. There are two key rock grooves that we're going to touch on, and then in the end talk about applying all of this, so especially in a live situation. If you are in a blues band, what are the things that you need to know? What are the rules that really apply? What is the information that we covered in video one and in this one that really apply on a bandstand, and also by extension going to blues jams. But really, those are the key aspects that really make live blues work, and we are going to dive in now. Yes, your eyes are not deceiving you, and certainly much to the consternation of my drummer friends, I am behind the drum kit. But I can do that because this kit is in my home. So we're going to focus on shuffles, and the next four segments actually, are going to cover various variations on a shuffle groove, and what is a shuffle groove and how do you play it right. First off, this is the shuffle groove, and this is really the shuffle either played here on the hi-hat, on the snare, or on the ride cymbal. Sometimes you encounter situations where drummers, especially if they're playing to a sort of a lumpy shuffle, will try to put the shuffle down in the kick drum. I'm going to explain why that doesn't work. It absolutely destroys the groove. So something that you may have heard is a drummer trying to do that, to follow a da-dun, 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 sort of a lumpy, what we call a lumpy shuffle. I'll talk about that because that's actually, for some anyway, a technical term. But yeah, what that does is it really messes with one of the key aspects of a shuffle. And for a shuffle that is played right, there is a rocking action. That's how I describe it. It is a back and forth feel, as the 1 and the 3 is that kick 1 and the 3, and the snare 2 and the 4, or but that is the emphasis anyway. There is a back and forth action, and it is impossible, I believe, for any living, breathing human to feel that energy of that particular groove and not dance. I believe that with all my heart. I've watched it over and over again. So, kick here on the 1 and the 3, snare or the backbeat on the 2 and the 4. That's what the backbeat is usually what is referred to as that 2 and the 4, and that shuffle beat here, that shuffle. Right now, I'm going to play it on the hi-hat. I will have some examples that play it in different places, and there are different very specific grooves that put that shuffle on the snare, but never shuffle on the kick. So this is what we're going to end up with here. 2, 3, 4. And there you go. That's one example of how a shuffle is played, and we're going to dive into some segments here that are going to go deep into this and focus on, as a guitar player, how do you play effectively against these grooves, and I'm going to cover several different examples here. Coming right up. All right, this is shuffle groove number 1. And it is going to be, parts of it anyway, familiar. Something that if you've been playing blues at all, you definitely will have heard this particular way of playing a blues shuffle. And I've also referenced this a little bit. I've sort of joked around about something called a lumpy shuffle or a lumpy shuffle. I've heard it called both ways, but it's a term that you may hear if you're out playing with a blues band and somebody is trying to describe to you how a particular blues groove goes. And it would be familiar because this is the feel. So in other words, this is sometimes one of the first things that people learn when they learn to play some kind of a blues. And I'm just going to add some additional things to it and talk about this particular groove, which is our point here. You will hear in this groove that there is all the emphasis I was talking about before, as far as where the shuffle is being placed. You will also hear a little bit of a ghost note and another little flourish that is put into this particular groove. We're going to move on to something that's going to be different than that even in a little bit. But listen for those elements that I just talked about in the last segment, and it's going to sound like this. There you are, a lumpy shuffle. We're going to move on to a slightly different variation on this with a little bit different emphasis on where the shuffle is, and we're going to do that right now. All right, blues groove number 2 is going to be a little bit different in a couple of respects. So first off, it is going to be, I'm going to play it different. So I'm going to play against this particular groove very differently with some different chord voicings, and more of a swing feel, and some chord substitutions and stuff that I'll cover actually in some later videos. The other thing about this particular groove, unlike what I had described when I was back behind the drums, where I said that most shuffle beats or shuffle grooves have emphasis on the 1 and the 3, this one is going to be similar to what I would call a 4 on the floor groove. So in other words, it's got a steady 1, 2, 3, 4 with the kick drum, as opposed to just on the 1 and the 3 and the snare on the backbeat 2 and the 4. And it sounds something like this. Hear how that steady 4 is. There you go. That is shuffle groove number 2. We're going to move on to one more, and then another explanation of something that is really cool coming up in the next segment. Okay, shuffle groove number 3. This is a little different. The emphasis as far as where the shuffle is going to be heavily on the snare, obviously, on this one. So listen for that. This is going to lead pretty directly into the next segment, which I've already sort of pushed a little bit about a real cool thing that I'm going to reference in the next segment as far as another video with a great instruction piece that everybody needs to check out, especially if you are into Stevie Ray Vaughan. So with that little lead in, here is the groove. Listen to how it is different, how the emphasis is different. It sounds like this. I'm also playing it very different. There you go. That is example number 3. And now on to something a little bit different. Okay, that last shuffle groove was pretty close to what I would call, and many players would call, a Texas shuffle or a rub shuffle. And I'm going to link a video in the description down below that will take you to a really great explanation of what a Texas or rub shuffle is. It's a video by the great Chris Layton. Chris, of course, played with Stevie Ray Vaughan for most of his career in Double Trouble, and he really does know his way around a shuffle, and particularly that Texas shuffle feel. So check that out. As I said, it'll be down in the description below. Lastly, I also want to say, before we move on to some other grooves and some other examples, is that, while a shuffle is certainly the quintessential blues groove, definitely is, every drummer every blues band plays it a little bit different. There are some shuffle grooves that swing a little bit more. There are some shuffle grooves that are way up on top of the beat. You know, that's what fits with a particular song or a particular feel that the band is going for. And it is sort of this real up on top of the beat, herky-jerky sort of feel that pushes the groove in a really different way. So check these examples out, check all this stuff out. And lastly, if you have favorite shuffle grooves, bands that are playing what you think is the quintessential shuffle example, put them in the comments down below. I'd love to know. I will add some of my own as well, and let's get a great discussion going about that. And we are going to move on to the next one right now. All right, the next groove is happening right now. This is sort of a variation on a 6/8 or 12/8 blues. So it's in triplets. So that nice 6/8 feel, there's a swing to it, and you can kind of hear it. That there's an emphasis that they're putting on the snare that makes it sound really cool. And it's not just a straight thing. It's not the stereotypical way that sometimes people play a slow blues. It's got some swing to it, and I think that is really important. 6/8 blues, 12/8 blues. Okay, here's a groove that is often overlooked in the blues world, and this is a Latin groove, what I would call a rumba beat. I'm not sure if that's exactly what it is, but that's always what I have heard it called. The groove is like this, and there's a lot of songs that have that groove that would be in the blues genre. There you go, a rumba beat or a Latin groove. Sometimes it is called out on the bandstand, but definitely one that you should practice. And there are lots of variations, lots of fun ways to play it. There you go. Okay, rock beat number 1. This groove, again, is a common one. There are several songs. Ones that pop to mind right now include Junior Wells' song called Snatch It Back and Hold It. That would be a common song. Some other Junior Wells songs, he sort of liked this groove a little bit. But this would be a common song that you would might be called on to play if you were out playing with a blues band. And the groove goes kind of like this. So there you go. That is rock beat number 1. Okay, rock song number 2 is one of my favorite songs to play. It is a song right now, or a groove that is usually attributed to a particular song by Paul Butterfield called Born in Chicago. Great song. I usually play harp on this song with many bands that I play with, just because it is a harp song and that is a big part of what goes on here. But I've played rhythm guitar in a number of bands too, to this song, and so I'm going to show you what I typically do. I'm going to do 2 passes. Pass number 1 is going to focus on the rhythm, essentially mirroring what the bass player is playing. Pass number 2 is going to emphasize some things that I think really drive this song, and the song can really drive and be a lot of fun. It definitely is one of those songs that's also a crowd pleaser. So, this is the groove. There you go. That is a great one. Learn that song, learn that riff, and have fun, because that's what it's all about. All right, and now for something completely different. This is a groove that I would call a 2/4 or a country hop. It is definitely a faster country feel than maybe anything else that you have heard played in blues, but there are songs that use this particular feel and groove, and one in particular is one that you may be called on if you're in a blues band to play at the end of the night, and that is a song called "I've Got My Mojo Working," and so that kind of a groove is common and something you definitely need to know. And it sounds like this. And I'm playing it fast, so this is fast. This is definitely over 200 beats a minute, and for mojo, generally it does go pretty fast. So there you go, a 2/4 country hop beat, and definitely a fun song to play. Lots of different variations and lots of cool things you can do. Learn it, practice it, do it. Well, Before we move into the final section of this video, where I'm going to talk about taking all of the information that I introduced in video 1, all of the information that I have mentioned here in this video, and applying it in an actual band situation or at a jam session, I want to just kind of wrap up this whole blues groove section. I've already kind of referenced this, and I just want to emphasize that this is not the definitive list. It is not all there is. There are funk grooves that are common. There are soul-inflected sort of things. You know, Marcus King, great player, one of my favorites right now, is doing a lot of stuff like that. Josh Smith, another great player that I really respect a lot, are doing a lot of those kinds of things. You can check that out, learn those kinds of things as well. I will do videos on a lot of those kinds of things coming up. I think those are important things to know. But what I have covered here so far will get you by in pretty much any situation playing in a blues band or going to a blues jam. You need to be able to play a shuffle. You need to be able to play to a slow blues. You need to understand how Latin grooves work, and you need to understand the basic rock grooves that might be out there. And that'll get you started and get you really moving in a good way. So I'm gonna say that, and as we begin to transition now into the application part of things, just encourage everybody to do two things: learn songs. You learn songs, you learn the genre. You will learn all of the different aspects here. You will learn about the grooves, how they work, how songs are structured, how people play rhythm against soloists, good ways to play solos, all those sorts of things, and listen. Get out there and really listen to the classic players in particular, because I really believe that the genre is there. But I've mentioned already in this segment here a couple of people that I really greatly respect. And there are other players out there doing incredible stuff too. So listen to the music, learn songs, practice, and keep in touch. And we're going to move into talking about actually being in a band now and what that is like and what it's all about. Okay, the last segment here is, as I said, about application of all of this information. Playing in a band is going to require all of the things that I talked about in video 1 and all of the information that I've just talked about in the section on grooves, and applying this in real specific ways. First off, blues bands rarely practice. Very often you will be called into a circumstance where you will be coming in sight unseen. You'll arrive at the gig and you don't know any of the other players. You've never played with them before. And so that is very, very common. People just sort of dive in. We speak the universal languages of the blues, which is something you hear people say a lot, and we just jump in. Some key information that you will need to know, though. Playing by numbers is literally the language that is communicated from person to person as songs are introduced. They may say things referencing some of the information I've talked about in this video. This is an uptown shuffle. It's a straight 12, so you will know what a straight 12-bar blues is. And it starts on the 5, walks to the 4 and to the 1, does that at every turnaround. There's a stop on the third verse. Watch me for the stop. And then they will give you a tempo, count it in, and you're off. That is how songs are generally introduced. Which means that collaboration and paying attention to everybody is so important. Especially this. Rule number 1 of playing in every blues band that I've ever been in, and it was something that I learned early on, is that at the turnaround in particular, all eyes go to the person at the microphone, or the designated band leader, and it should be very clear in the beginning who that person is that's calling off the songs, leading the songs, doing all those sorts of things. They will, at that time, they may call a stop. They may lower the volume down. They may turn to somebody and give somebody a solo. But all those things will be communicated then. And that's just the way that things generally work. So paying attention there is super, super important. And all of the things that we've talked about up to this point apply there. You know, they will signal stops. They will play ahead prior to coming into another verse or into a chorus. And all those things are in video number 1. So if you don't know what a head is, don't know what a turnaround is, all that information is there. They may signal something like, everybody white, here we go. They're going to be holding up fingers. Again, playing by numbers. At either maybe we go 2-5 at the turnaround, or here we go, we're going to the chorus, it goes to the 4 chord, and they will tell you that. So again, you're watching that person, you will know what's happening. The next rule is that when in doubt, lay back. And very often turn and look at the drummer. The drummer will often have some idea about what's happening because they're the one that is holding the groove together, or the bass player too. In my bands, that tends to be the case. And you will meet the bass player in upcoming videos. So that's important though. Laying back is something that is just sometimes a structured part of what happens. That the person at the microphone may give you a hand signal to bring the volume down, and then may talk to the audience, may introduce the band members, may give a shout out to the club owner or somebody else in the club. Made any number of different things, may signal somebody to take a solo over that, or may take a solo themselves over that sort of simmering thing that's happening. And everybody else is kind of laying back, you know, just for me, especially if I'm not sure what's going on, I'm just going to play some stabs. Just kind of laying back and just kind of letting things simmer until you see what's happening. And again, paying attention to that person at the microphone is critical. Another thing that my wife was emphatic that I say, and being a bass player of renown in the blues world, also plays a lot of other genres, but you will meet her in the 3rd video. She wanted me to remind everybody that it is important, and so that we will call this rule number 2, to know when not to play. And that is important. And things may drop out. And as a guitar player, I may just sort of turn my guitar down and wait. This particularly becomes important as you are playing behind soloists. Sometimes that space that you're giving that player is really important. You may give them that kind of a chord to, and now here's all this space now as the bass and drums and everything else is kind of cooking along. And I may not play a ton other than little stabs like that until it comes back around to the turnaround. And then the second time around, underneath that soloist, I may give a lot more structure to what I'm doing. I may go up and I may play up some chords up an octave up, or something like that. But these are all so important for making a blues band really work. Paying attention, it's important to remember that this is a collaboration above all, and the whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts when it's really working. Here's what I will tell you, this is my philosophy of playing in bands, is that I want my presence in that ensemble to add something that brings this ensemble up to something greater. I don't want to be just another voice that may be just muddying up the waters. I want to present something that brings the collaboration up to another level. And that's my philosophy. That's how I play. And sometimes that means not playing much. Sometimes that means sort of laying back. Sometimes that means sort of presenting a chord at a certain point, that or any number of different things. It is not always about playing that blistering solo, which may be important at some point, but it may not be the thing that fits the song in the moment at that time. And so understanding some of the concepts that I introduced in the first video, like call and response. So everything is laying back and people are, it's kind of cooking along, and then you give a call. And maybe that's answered by another player, or you answer it yourself. But those are the kinds of magical moments that can happen on the bandstand. If everybody is paying attention, if everybody is, again, speaking that universal language of the blues, and everybody is there in the moment with what is happening. That is so important. Lastly, I want to say that one of the keys here is building your repertoire. Learning those songs, really being familiar with all of the different ways of playing rhythms against all of these grooves. That is, I think, 90% of what makes you a good, well-rounded player that will be one of those people that will be on call and in demand. Is you know songs, you will get the nod. And especially if you can get out there and you can introduce those songs and all those sorts of things, that makes you an on-demand person. And that is doubly true at jam sessions. The people that stay up at jam sessions and get the most playing time are the people that know songs, that know how to sing those songs, know how to lead those songs, know how to be that person at the microphone. You will be the person that will stay up and have the most time up there. It is not the person that can play the most stunning solos. Sometimes those kind of things just don't fit. And so there are times that it does, but that very often that is the case. So take all this information. One thing that I will ask you to do is to, again, comment in the comments section below about your favorite players, examples of shuffles, other grooves, all those sorts of things, and practice, play, apply this stuff, stay in touch because it's really important. I'm going to base a lot of the things that I'm going to do in terms of subsequent videos off of the comments and the questions that I get, which is where a lot of this came from that I'm doing right now. And we will see you soon.